move on to the NFC West now, another division with last year's Super Bowl participant, the 49ers, and also the division that I claimed in an earlier episode will be the toughest division this year in the NFL for reasons that will become apparent as we talk through this division. I think they have some strong-ass teams and some up-and-coming teams. But we're going to start with last year's Super Bowl runner-up. We're going to start with the 49ers, and Pookie, we're going to let you take that one first.
The 49ers, I think that they have a very high probability to repeat because, they play the AFC East and the let's see.
What's wrong with the AFC East?
The AFC East and teams out of the NFC East. So it's like, man, they play the Jets, the Giants, the Patriots. Those are all winnable games. The only games that I can see them losing on their schedule are maybe once against Seattle, New Orleans, and Buffalo and Dallas may be able to pull off upsets. But other than that, those are all very winnable games for the 49ers. When you look at their depth chart, they're stacked. They have Jimmy G coming back. He's a great quarterback, and he's shown that he can, if anything, manage the game well enough to not lose. And they have a very deep backfield: Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman, Jerick McKinnon. Those guys, they really fit.
Check.
Yeah, with Kyle Shanahan's run-oriented offense, they're going to pound it, and they're going to be difficult to stop because they're so deep in the backfield. They have guys like Deebo Samuel, Kendrick Bourne, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. Just acquired Trent Williams. I mean, it's there's a lot of talent on this team, and that's not even talking about their defense because they may have the best defense in football. So it's like, where's the weakness on this team? I don't know. John Lynch has done a very good job building this team, and I see, no matter what, I see them returning to the playoffs. The question is if they're going to be playing in the Super Bowl or not.
I love what they did on defense as well. It goes with what they did on offense, where I think they knew going into it that Joe Staley was going to retire. So then you go out and you get a potential Hall of Famer at left tackle with Trent Williams, and you get him for just a second rounder. And then but you also have that 14th pick you get from the Colts. So you do lose to Forrest Buckner, who had a very solid year last year. I say very solid. He was great. But I do get a younger guy, Javon Kinlaw, in the interior, who some NFL scouts were saying, dude, this man is right there with Chase Young as being a force on the defensive side. So the 49ers, you lose Buckner, but to get Kinlaw and then to get Trent Williams, I thought they had a great offseason. And they didn't have to do anything, really. I mean, you lose Emmanuel Sanders, Brandon Ayuk, we don't know much about yet. I know John Lynch and company were very high on him. They had him very high on their draft board. So it remains to be seen there. Gotta love George Kittle. You mentioned him. Drew, you mentioned him. The very fact that the 49ers take pride in their fullbacks. We are a fullback-loving show. Kyle Juszczyk, fucking love him. I'm so high on the 49ers. And, Dre Greenlaw being an Arkansas guy, I got to play against Dre Greenlaw. No bias there, but I'm high on the 49ers too. They're under a total is at 10.5. 10.5 is great for any team, but that's almost disrespectful to the 49ers. I have them easily over 10.5.
I think the biggest question when it comes to the 49ers is that Super Bowl hangover. You see it in so many teams on if they can get back, and the Rams, the Falcons, the Panthers, multiple years where some teams made it there and they lost and they couldn't make it back. So I think that the biggest question is are they going to have a Super Bowl hangover and whether or not they're going to be able to come back. I think they have the roster to do it. Same with the Chiefs. They brought back most players. I think they're going to be there, but it's one of those things that's a real thing. It's
true. All right, Drew. You're wearing, for the people at home who can't see, you're rocking the Russell Wilson gamer, Russell Wilson Jr. the third. Over under at 9.5. How are you feeling about those Seahawks, Drew?
Again, like you just mentioned, the AFC East, NFC East, they're playing against. I think it's an easy way for them to be able to get 9 wins. And I think they beat the Rams twice, and they probably beat the Cardinals twice, and I think they go 1-1 with the Niners. So I mean, I think that's over 9 wins right there. So I'm slamming the over for them. I think you take Russell Wilson away from this roster, they're probably a team vying for that first pick. I think, we had a discussion about, Pat Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. I think Russell Wilson is right up there with them, how valuable he is to this team. And to think that he's never had a MVP before his entire career is just amazing because, early on he had defense to lean on. In the last couple of years, he's really put this team on his back. Hold my dick, Marshawn Lynch, where he led them to the, last year the Seahawks probably shouldn't have made the playoffs, and he really just like, hey, come along with me. He was a lead MVP vote person for the MVP race started happening. So I think the Seahawks very well coached team. They get the most out of their players who aren't big name guys, and I think having Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner, two of the best at their positions, really makes them an underdog.
I can be subject to hyperbole at times. I do believe in the last 7 to 8 years, there hasn't been a player more valuable to his team than Russell Wilson. And the only guy I can think of that would compete for that distinction is Aaron Rodgers with the Packers. I think if you took Russell Wilson away from the Seahawks, where are they? And he hasn't had the weapons that those other teams have. Like, there was a poll question that Pro Football Focus put out earlier that we can talk about some other time or maybe after this. It's like, would you rather have Russell Wilson and the Chiefs or Pat Mahomes and the Seahawks? To me, I was like, that's easy. I want to see Russell Wilson with those weapons, see what he can do. So just because I don't know if I took Russell Wilson away, how far they fall. But I'm with you, Drew. Russell Wilson is the guy for the Seahawks. There's no question about it. With him, they're a wild card, man. No matter how you look at it, never count them out as long as Russ is there. Speaking of teams that maybe we counted out last year, but maybe on the rise again this year, we don't know. We'll see what Pookie says. The Los Angeles Rams moving into a brand new stadium, a fancy new stadium, and hopefully they get to plan it this year. Maybe not. But their win over-under totals at 8.5. Pookie, what you got?
The Rams are a team that really pisses me off because they had all the potential in the world to be a great team for at least 5 to 8 years, okay? They had the talent, but their roster-building philosophy was basically worry about the picks later, worry about who we trade later, let's go and get this guy. Like, they went and got Jalen Ramsey. They trade for people so much, and they give up so much draft capital. They haven't had a first-round pick since 2016. So it's like, how can you build your roster for the future when you were sacrificing all of your draft picks for already maybe proven but also older veterans that are a lot more expensive? Yes, you do need high-name, big-name guys with some pretty big contracts in this league. You can't afford to not pay up. But the Rams just pissed me off because they went and they even released guys like Todd Gurley, who he obviously had injury problems. So you take away your best player on offense, and you try and replace him with a running back by committee. You trade Brandon Cooks to the Texans in exchange for draft capital. So it's just like Cooper Kupp, I still love him, great receiver. Aaron Donald may be the best defender in football. And they have some other guys on their team that are sneaky good. So it's like, yeah, the Rams aren't going to be a playoff team, but I don't think they'll be vying for the number 1 pick either, which isn't necessarily a good thing.
Hold up, Drew. Cannot believe I'm doing this for a second time this week. Let me do what I did last time. Let me settle the debate right here. Aaron Donald is the best defensive player in football. Bar none. It's not even close. What did you say?
What's the best defensive player in football?
Drew, what did he say? Didn't he say he's one of the best?
He said arguably he's one of the best.
Arguably one of the best? There's no argument to it. It's over. It's over.
If J.J. Watt was healthy, he'd be better. I said it.
Oh, no! Go, Drew, get him.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to get in that argument. I'm going to let Pookie and Sandy continue to go with it. But I'll talk about the Rams. I think the Rams need to blow it up and go full rebuild and rebuild around golf. I think they're too old, and I think too many big contracts. And I really think they need to just kind of be like, okay, new stadium, new us. I know they want to sell tickets, but I don't think they have it this year. They're going to be one of those teams that I think will be in no man's land between 10 and 15 when they pick, and they're going to get a guy that's not going to help them right away, but that's going to kind of be more of a development guy. And Andrew Whitworth at the left tackle, he's pretty old, so I think they need to rebuild. I feel so bad because Aaron Donald's on that team, and I really want to see him in the Super Bowl again because he's such a great defensive player, but I don't think it's going to happen in his career.
We'll table this debate for another episode. Okay, I cannot. Wow. The Rams, what they did is they went all in. They made that Jalen Ramsey trade. They go all in to win, and they put themselves in cap hell. And the worst thing, they didn't win the Super Bowl when they had the chance. And now you have to deal with the consequences. And what those were is those contracts that weigh you down. You had to get – honestly, Pookie, they had to get rid of Todd Gurley on that contract. Too expensive. He's got arthritis in those knees. Arthritis does not go away. You can try to manage it, but you just don't know. You got to get rid of that contract. It's killing you. Brandon Cooks' contract was killing you. You had to get rid of that too. So that's the price. When you go all in, you got to win. And they didn't. And I think their reasoning was, ideally, yes, you try to build your team up in rebuilding years. But at that time, they didn't see it as we need to rebuild. You give your quarterback big money. We go all in. Let's go all in, put our chips in. We're in this year. Let's go win it. And they just didn't win it. And now you saw them dealing with the effects. Cooks and Gurley are gone. Running back by committee, which I don't know if that's the worst thing. It depends on how that offense looks next year. You got Darrell Henderson at running back. Drew, I forget about the other guys they got.
Cam Akers and Malcolm Brown are the other two running backs.
Yeah, so it remains to be seen. It had to be done. It's a better option than having Gurley on that roster. I don't know. It's a shame that he can't return back to his rookie form, but that's just reality of the NFL. So it hurts. But now this is the team I've been looking most forward to talk about is the Cardinals. Now their over-under win total is only at 7. It's 7 flat, but things are looking up for those boys in Arizona. Drew, what are we thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest question for the Cardinals is how much impact does D-Hop have? And, I think they're fringe 7 wins. I think they're either going to get 6, 7, or 8 wins, and I think it just depends on how they really play in that division. I think the Rams, I think they probably split, and I think they go 0-2 against the Niners and the Seahawks. But, other than that, again, AFC East, NFC East, we've talked about it 2 times already. I think those are winnable games for the Cardinals, but I think it really depends on Kyler Murray's development year 2 in the NFL, and I think it really depends on how Cliff uses D-Hop. I think he's great. I think the addition of Isaiah Simmons on defense is great. I think they got a steal in the 3rd round with Josh Jones out of Houston, which they really needed to bolster that O-line. So I think they made a lot of moves in the right direction. I don't think they're there yet. I think they're still 2-3 years out from being any contender. And with the NFC East being West being so tough right now, I think they really should just take back, get some more draft picks, assume some more top 10 picks, and then in a couple of years we'll be talking about the Cardinals are coming out of the NFC West.
Well, the Cardinals did business in the NFL draft, and business was booming. I get Isaiah Simmons with the 8th pick, and I get a freaking steal with Josh Jones in the 3rd round. I know there are some writers who are not sure if Josh Jones starts right away, but certainly helps out for the future, giving Murray some support and protection on that O-line. Kenyon Drake had an amazing last half of the year when he came in. You obviously had one of the best receivers in the game with Hopkins. Fitz is on his last legs, but him on his last legs is better than most people on however many legs you give him. I don't know. They needed help with tight ends, being able to guard tight ends. Obviously, you have one of the best tight ends in the game with George Kittle. Isaiah Simmons can help out with that. Seeing what he does this year, I'm very interested to see. But with the Cardinals, I'm really excited to see what they do, seeing Kyler Murray's progression in his 2nd year. Kingsbury, can that offense continue to put up numbers? Don't forget, Drew, you said that they would go 0-4 versus Seahawks and Niners. That very well may be true. Those two teams are better than the Cardinals, I believe, at this point. But remember that with a worse roster than what they have now going into next season, that Cardinals team almost beat the Niners in San Fran.
Yeah, I think
in a game that San Fran had to win.
And I think they actually beat the Seahawks in Seattle, but they've beat the Seahawks in Seattle like the last 3 of the 4 years or something crazy like that. But I mean, they're a competitive team. I think with Cliff Burry's offense, they're very competitive because they can score it at almost any time on the field and they can go really fast.
Pookie, help me out with this, Pookie. What's a successful season for Arizona this year?
I would say if they got to 8 or 9 or 9-7, that would be successful. And if they get there, it's going to be one name that everybody's forgetting: Chandler Jones. Okay.
Whoa, that's true.
One of the best pass rushers in the game. He's been doing it for a while out of Syracuse. He's often forgotten about, but I think he had like 19 sacks last year.
So he led the league in sacks. Yeah.
He led the league in sacks, and it's kind of like asinine to not mention him when it comes to the best defenders in football. So it's like, yeah, Arizona just added all this offensive talent, but you can't forget what they have on the other side of the ball just because of Chandler Jones and what he does to affect the game.
And one of the best cornerbacks in the game still, too.
Yeah,
Patrick Pete. Yeah. He's getting up there in age, but I think he's still one of the better corners in football. We'll see if he has a bounce back year in the next season, because I think he's due for that. Because in the Cardinals' down years, he typically has a down year, but whenever the Cardinals break out, he also breaks out. So he kind of plays up to the team around him.
Yeah.
So Drew,
I was going to ask, who do you think is going to be in the bottom of the NFC West, the Rams or the Cardinals?
I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams were at the bottom.
I have a gut feeling it's the Rams, man, and I love Sean McVay. I have a weird feeling about the Cardinals. I don't know why. I have a weird feeling that they will do a little more than they're thought to. The Rams are – they're not right there yet still with their roster. I still think they need a little more work. They gave so much money to Jared Goff. I don't know if that pays off or not. I don't know where he is. So I don't know, man. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I think it's you've got top 2 teams and you got bottom 2 teams, and it just depends on where you see them fit.
So when we're looking at the playoff picture, then I feel pretty good about the top 2 teams both getting in. Any chance for a third there, Pookie?
I think if some other teams, if they get some help on the back end, Arizona might be able to sneak into the playoffs with like a 9-7 record. So it's like, do I see them going 11-5 and winning the NFC West? No, but I think that you can't count them out with what they're doing down there in Arizona. I just think that it could be a couple of more years before we actually see that come to fruition. But keep on the lookout for late in this season for some other teams struggling, because the Cardinals might be able to sneak in.
Yeah, my thing with the NFC West is, if I was to fall into a coma and wake up right before the playoffs and you told me that the Rams had made the playoffs, I wouldn't be entirely surprised. I know I just went down on them. No, I was down on them. I didn't go down on Hey, on Sean McVay, if I was to go down on Sean McVay, I'd be doing better than most girls out there. So, I mean, come on. Hottest coach in the NFL. Hey, that's a topic for another day. Hottest coaches in the NFL. Sean McVay and Cliff Kingsbury in the same division. Come on. That's tough.
And Pete Carroll, you cannot talk
I love
about
Pete Carroll, but
I'm just kidding.
He does have great gray hair. So getting back to it, with the Rams, I could almost see them in the play. I feel like if they're in the playoffs, all right, I get it. The Cardinals, again, it's a gut feeling. There's just something weird going down there in Arizona. You got to get Larry Fitz a damn trophy, man. That man needs it. He's one of the most deserving players without one besides Marino. So I could – that is to say, all 4 teams in some way I could see making the playoffs. Not in the same year. I'm getting ahead of myself. What I mean is, however, with the NFC, it's so loaded in other areas with other teams fighting for the wild card. Don't forget, the Vikings or the Packers are most likely a wild card team. the Eagles or the Cowboys are most likely a wild card team. And I haven't even mentioned the NFC South yet. So my only thing with getting 3 teams in the playoffs from the West is it's so loaded in other divisions where it's easier to get a better record because the NFC West is like a buzzsaw unless you're the 49ers and the Seahawks. I mean, and even then they may trip them up. So I don't like the NFC West getting 3 teams in the playoffs just because of the other divisions in the conference. But as far as depth goes, I do think they have the most depth of any division, not just in the NFC, but in the NFL. So
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think you can see a scenario where every team gets in the playoffs somehow, whether it's a wild card or I can even see Seattle somehow sneaking and getting the NFC West title and beating out the Niners. I mean, they were 1 yard away from it happening last year. So. And that could have dramatically changed the playoffs. So I think every team has a way to get in, but I think the most likely way is it's definitely going to be Seattle and the Niners, and then the Cardinals probably maybe sneak their way in there depending on like tiebreakers and stuff.
That'd be a sexy matchup, man. Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray and company in the playoffs. Watch out.
It'd be scary.
Watch out. And I love the fact that they've got the NFC East this year, so you get to see – or no, the NFC South. No, yeah, I had it right the first time. The NFC East. You get the Cowboys. You get some good matchups there. Again, I'm looking super pumped for a Cowboys-49ers matchup again. Finally get them when both teams are good. But it'll be a fun year in the NFC West.